Good morning, everybody. You might be aware that there's a class called Cleric in the game. Cleric is a divine caster that allows you to cast all sorts of types of holy magic, so that way you can either bless your allies, heal them, or call down some very, very holy fire to burn your enemies. However, there's another type of divine caster that is very similar, and that is the Favoured Soul, which we're looking at today. Basically, the big difference between Favoured Souls and Clerics is they're like the sorcerer version of Clerics. They don't get the increased cast speed that sorcerers get, but they get the extra spell points that sorcerers get, so they can cast more spells. However, their spell selection is much more limited. So if you end up playing as a Favoured Soul, you can cast way more spells than your Cleric companions can. Well, way more of the same spells, but the Clerics get a much wider variety. So we're going to go over some of the key differences. However, if you have already played Cleric before, I will let you know when you can kind of just like skip over to the sections that you're going to want to see if you're just a Cleric player. Now to get started, one of the major differences between Cleric and Favoured Soul is the main stat. Clerics are wisdom-based spellcasters, so you want to max out your wisdom on a Cleric. Favoured Souls, on the other hand, can choose. You can choose either your wisdom or your charisma. The game will automatically use whichever is higher, so you don't have to worry about selecting something in the character creation. If you want to play a charisma-based Favoured Soul, you max out your charisma for all your spell casting. If you want to play a wisdom-based Favoured Soul, you max out your wisdom. There's a few reasons as to why you would do different types. Then up first is depending on which race you want to play. Maybe you want to play a race that gets a bonus to charisma or a bonus to wisdom, so having a higher start there makes more sense to max out that statistic. Additionally, depending on the type of gear you want to wear, there might be easier options for charisma versus wisdom or wisdom versus charisma as you get later in the game. And then the actual effects that charisma and wisdom have on your character. Wisdom, not only does it give you all your spell stats, but it also increases your will saves, which can be relevant, as well as increasing your heal skills, so you get slightly more healing out of that, versus charisma, which does not increase your will saves, but it does increase your like charismatic skills, bluff, intimidate, diplomacy, if that's relevant to you, and there might be some specific racial abilities that might work off as well. Overall, it doesn't terribly matter which one you pick, they're both powerful, but for this example, wisdom is kind of the main stacking stat here. You then also want some constitution, so that way you don't die, and the rest of your stats don't really matter. As far as your race goes, again, doesn't matter too much. I just picked human because they're like jack of all trades and they're good for getting started, but it doesn't really matter which race you actually decide to go with. So just again, pick something that seems like it's a right fit for you. Now, I want to go over something that's kind of one of the key differences between Cleric and Favoured Soul as well, other than just the stats. By the way, this is the only class in the game that works like this, where you can just use whichever stat you want, which is kind of cool. You get more spell points because that's just how they get it. They just get more spell points than a Cleric. Their spells are limited, so Clerics have like the whole list of spells they can pick from, but as a Favoured Soul instead, when you level up, you get to pick a spell and then that's it. So I do have a robust list of spells for you to pick from, so you don't have to worry about that. But the other thing that makes Favoured Souls different from Cleric is in their feats, which is that Favoured Souls get a special list of Favoured Souls feats for leveling up, whereas Clerics get access to their domains. So as a Cleric, you pick a domain like fire or water or light, and you get bonuses with those types of skills and abilities and whatever it gives you. Instead, Favoured Souls get a couple more generic features, some of which can actually be much nicer than the Clerics. Number one, at level 2 Favoured Soul, you get the ability to choose either Wisdom or Charisma to use as your attacking damage stat with your main weapon. And this is actually really, really exciting. So if you're playing a Cleric, you're going to start with a lot of spellcaster stats, so a lot of wisdom, and in the early levels, casters tend to feel pretty bad. So you're going to be beating stuff up with a mace, or more often hiring a hireling and then casting heal spells on them. However, as a Favoured Soul, as long as it's a favored weapon of mine, which is you get to pick with your religion, in this build we're taking Orion, which is Quarterstaff, as long as I have a Quarterstaff in my hand, I can choose to use either Wisdom or Charisma to hit and damage with my favored weapon, which means even in the early levels, because I maxed out my spellcasting stat, it actually doesn't feel too bad to level with melee, so I can supplement all of my spells with melee attacks until the spells get more powerful and they finally take over, which makes Favoured Souls really nice to start leveling with, because you can kind of play melee in general. Additionally, they just get elemental absorptions, so you get to pick different elemental damage types to resist and take less damage from, and you can either choose to get a huge boost to health or spell points. In this example, we're going to be doing health because I think extra health is really good for people who are starting out. But again, you could choose spell points. The only other major difference between Cleric and Favoured Soul is their enhancement trees. So if you have already seen the Cleric video, skip ahead to the enhancement tree section, and then you're pretty much good for the rest of the video. But if you don't know anything about it, stay tuned. We're going to go through the rest of the things. When it comes to your skills, basically, you don't really need a whole lot of them. I put a little bit of points in concentration here, so that way you're able to make it so when you take a hit, you don't lose your spells, which is good. However, almost all the time, you're going to have the Quicken meta magic feat enabled, which will make it so you can't get interrupted anyway, but we'll talk about that later. You take heal, because heal increases the healing that you get. You take jump, because it makes you jump higher. And you take spellcraft here, which gives you increased spell damage. The only other things you could possibly consider taking are Tumble and Use Magic Device. So this is entirely up to you. You're going to be wearing armor, so you're not going to be tumbling as often. And Use Magic Device, additionally, is usually really, really good on every single character. But in this case, all of the good spells you would want to need to make a Use Magic Device for, like let's say buying a Scroll of Raise Dead and being able to resurrect your allies, as a Favoured Soul, you just get to cast it for free. So you don't need to have Use Magic Device to be able to do that. So just in general, you don't need this skill. Now, before I talk about the feats, let's talk about the mechanics of casting spells. So as previously mentioned, you do have spell points. These are your spell points here. When you cast spells, your spell points go down and they don't come back. Spell points do not regenerate in Dungeons & Dragons Online. To get your spell points back, either you have to complete an adventure or find a rest point during an adventure, a rest shrine. So whenever you're examining a spell, you want to read on the description of it. It gives you information like the cooldown of the spell, who you can target, what the saving throw is, which is basically what if an enemy has to resist this effect, what they need to roll to be able to resist it, what the spell point cost is, and what the spell school is, as well as the caster level. Now, to break it down, the caster level is just the power of the spell. If you're used to playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, spells deal damage based on the level of the spell. In older editions, it's based on your caster level. So for example, Cure Light Wounds here, it says positive energy is channeled to heal light wounds, so it does 3 to 8 hit points plus 1 per caster level. So a level 1 character casting Cure Light Wounds is 4 to 9 damage, whereas me, because I am level 7, but it's capped at 5, that's the maximum, instead I am healing from 8 to 13 health onto one of my allies. The school is important because the spell school will determine how you increase the save that's there, because by making the save there higher, which is we call the DC, that makes it harder for it to be resisted, which means the monsters are going to take more from the effect. So as an example, if I take an offensive spell here like Soundburst, I have saved DC 17, and then this is an offensive spell that deals a d6 plus 1 sonic damage per caster level up to, it says up to 15, so it keeps scaling in damage as I get higher levels, and if the enemies fail their save, they get stunned. So again, that's kind of something you have to kind of understand is how the save works. So if you're playing against playing the game and you see monsters are saving frequently, you want to increase that save number. The way you increase that, the way that number is scaled, is it's the level of the spell plus the spell casting stat that you have. So I'm Wisdom, so it says +4 here. And then plus anything that gives relevant bonuses to this school. So this is school evocation, and in this character we take evocation focus because that's all of your damage spells, and we're building this as a damage caster because that's a fun way to play Favoured Soul. So that's the breakdown of a spell here, and now we're going to go over the feats because I wanted to talk about that so you had a bit of an understanding before we actually go deep into the feats. Specifically, as a religion, you take Follower of Orion. We do this because quarterstaffs are a really good leveling item because it just does good damage, and this allows you to just hit enemies with quarterstaffs using your wisdom to hit and damage. So even in the early levels where your spells are bad, you have a beat stick. You can take care of it there. On top of that, you also get Orion's Instruction, which is a buff that gives you a huge bonus to wisdom. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Favoured Souls don't get Turn Undead. So this thing only gives you +4 to your wisdom, but still that's really nice as a temporary buff. The feats that we take here are the meta magic feats. What these are these are special feats that if they are effectively like a stance, so let's say for example I have this here, I have Maximize. If I turn on Maximize, you can see now there's a ring going around it, and it says while this meta magic feat is active, you gain 150 spell power while casting spells affected by Maximize, but they consume 25 additional spell points. So Maximize gives 150 spell power. Spell power is 1% damage. So 150 spell power is 150% increased damage. If a spell would do 10, now it's doing 25. That's pretty good. And so it's nice to have lots of spell power, which is why Maximize is very good. However, Nimbus of Light, my level 1 damage spell, cost 4. Maximizing it makes it cost 29. So making the spell cost almost, or like more than 7 times what its original cost is, isn't worth doubling the damage. However, we can make adjustments here. Number one, as you get higher level spells, the tax isn't nearly as high. Again, Soundburst cost 15, so going from 15 all the way up to 40, I'm increasing my cost by 150%, or sorry, by more than 150%, but the damage goes up by 150%, so you can kind of look at it like, it's effectively, if this costs 37 or more, it's actually okay to turn this on, and it's basically just casting 2 spells for the price of 1, which is a way to think about it. But we can also modify how much Maximize will cost on all of our spells, and we'll talk about that later, especially once you get to some of the higher level spells. If a spell costs like 40 and then you increase the cost by 25, but you double its effectiveness, you're basically making money at that point. You're making spell points back. It's more efficient. But again, we'll talk more in detail about that. The main reason why you take Maximize Spell is because of something called spell-like abilities. Spell-like abilities are in your enhancement trees, which I will talk about later, but basically I get Nimbus of Light here from my enhancement tree. So this is the spell from my spell book. This is from the tree. Because this is a spell-like ability, it comes out of the character sheet enhancement panel here, so I can grab Nimbus of Light. One of the things you're going to notice is if I turn on Maximize, the Nimbus of Light here, my spell costs 29, but the spell-like ability costs 2. The spell-like abilities are unaffected by the change in cost to your metamagic feats, but they are affected by them, which means this Nimbus of Light costs 2, but now it's got a 150% increased spell power. And if I turn on Empower, that's an extra 75. And if I turn on Quicken, they now cast at double speed. So this is a double speed, almost 3 times damage spell for 2 spell points. And that's why we use metamagic feats. They're really, really good for your spell-like abilities, which allows you to be able to level much more comfortably and easily. And later on in the game, you'll actually be able to reduce the cost of these so much, you'll be able to just leave them on all the time and empower all of your spells. However, in the beginning of the game, you don't want to do that. So there actually is a solution here to prevent yourself from burning out all your spell points. Instead of just turning this on so that way you accidentally cast Nimbus of Light and it costs 54 and you're panicking, instead what you can do is you can right click on a spell, and that gives you a little menu, a little selector here. So I can go, oh, I want Empower in my metamagic or my spell-like ability to always be on. I want Maximize to always be on and Quicken to always be on. So I can just turn these off, and now this one will always cast as though it has these effects, which is how we use that. And I'll go more in depth into how to use your metamagic feats and what it looks like when we get to the combat section. Additionally, some of the feats you take are the spell focus feats, which give you evocation focus. Again, this is bonuses for your spell schools to make your spells harder to resist. As you continue to level up, you're going to be taking more and more of these focus feats. And another thing you'll also be taking is a combat style, which is Shield Mastery. Shield Mastery is good because it gives you increased defense while using shields, but it also, it's just generally going to be good because it gives you extra defense and other things. So you want to use quarterstaffs early to attack monsters, but once your spells start to take off, you don't need a quarterstaff anymore. So having a shield in one hand, you can cast spells while using shields, as well as using a spellcaster implement. Pretty much anything that gives you bonus spell power to whatever spells you're casting, which will usually be light spell power, is what you're going to be shooting for. Now, since we're already here, we're going to go over the enhancement tree because I think it's pretty relevant to going over the character. Bear in mind, you actually can play Favoured Soul as a melee. Some of you probably clocked the fact that, hey, if I can use my Wisdom or my Charisma as both a spellcasting ability and my weapon attack or weapon scaler of choice, doesn't that mean I could play like a cool hybrid spellcaster melee? And the answer is yes, you actually can. And that is the whole point of the War Soul enhancement tree. The War Soul enhancement tree allows you to get something called an imbue, where you add damage onto your weapon. So then in this case, it adds fire damage on all your weapon attacks. That scales with fire spell power. And in the tree, you get not only bonus special attacks like Smite Foe and passives that give you hit and damage, but it also gives you universal spell power. So you kind of get to scale all these things together. You also get one of the most powerful abilities in the game, a trance. So this ability here, Divine Might or Divine Will, gives you extra damage and combat stats based on your spellcasting ability. So if I'm all Charisma, I take Divine Might, and not only do I hit people based on my Charisma, I have a buff based on my Charisma as well. Same thing, I have a buff based on my Wisdom, or I use my Wisdom to hit and damage, which is kind of cool. That's the idea behind the War Soul tree. It's pretty fun, and it is a good way to play. If you want to try playing either a melee type of Holy Warrior character, and Paladin isn't doing it because you want the full suite of spellcasting, War Soul, Favoured Soul is definitely a good idea. I personally do like it quite a bit. However, this character is not a War Soul. This is a cook 'em on down, burn 'em with holy fire type character, and that's what we use the Angel of Vengeance tree. The Angel of Vengeance tree features several different spell-like abilities. The Nimbus of Light at level 1, which you're going to take right away, so you can blast people for high amounts of light damage. Then you get Sunbolt, which is basically this bolt of like radiant chromatic light that just burns everything in its path, which is really, really cool. And then finally at the top, we get Comet Fall, because what's more holy than asking your god to drop a comet on your foes? So you're going to be using all of these different spell-like abilities as you level up. On top of that, you also get to summon an Archon, so a little Lantern Archon that goes above your shoulder and starts beaming people and dealing damage to them, which is pretty cool. You get bonus to spell crit in the tree. You get bonus to caster levels in the tree. So even if, let's say, I'm level 7, if I had all of Intense Faith here, I would get an extra +3 cast levels. So I'd be casting spells as though I was level 10, which is a really big impact on your spell damage. You also get some like debuffs like Aura of Menace, where you debuff your enemies' abilities because they're just like afraid of you, which is kind of cool. And the capstone ability, the Ascendancy, allows you to cast the spell Searing Light for free, which is awesome. So you get a whole bunch of really cool stats there. The other tree that Favoured Souls get is called Beacon of Hope, and this is a healer tree. Favoured Souls' unique claim to healing, while Clerics are all about using their Turn Undead and turning that into healing with their healer tree as a Radiant Servant, where they can, instead of burning undead and killing them, they can make their Turn Undead cast a heal spell. You get buffs. You get all these different buffs called hopes. Hope for inspiration, hope for protection, hope for victory, and hope for success. These are really short duration buffs that you cast on your allies that give them huge amounts of stats. Hope for protection gives a damage reduction effect. Hope for victory gives a damage boost to your allies. And hope for success gives a massive damage boost to one person in your raid group. On top of that, you also get Wall of Fire, but healing. So you drop a Wall of Fire, but it's healing fire that heals everybody that stands inside of it, which is cool. And then you also have your beacons. Beacons are frontal cone abilities. You have to like, pay attention to where enemy or your allies are, and you cast this like cone of light that heals everybody in front of you that are very powerful and intuitive to use. I'm a big fan of Beacon of Hope. However, with this tree, we're not going to be using Beacon of Hope that much. The main thing we're going to be getting is this, Close Wounds. This is the best heal in Heroics. Close Wounds is basically an instant cast heal spell, but the healing amount is actually very low. The trick is, you don't want to cast Close Wounds, the actual spell. It's relatively expensive, and it's meant to be something where it's like a good stopgap, where if somebody's dying, you cast Close Wounds real quick, and it kind of just stops them from dying so you can get some heals in. However, because this is a spell-like ability with a 1-second cooldown, we can just spam this. So I don't have any items that give me any bonuses to healing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, I'm going to grab Close Wounds, I'm going to empower it, I'm going to maximize it, and I'm going to quicken it. This costs 2 spell points. Keep that in mind. Watch this healing. Boom. I have no items equipped. You think enemies can kill me? No, they can't. I can just keep doing this all day. Look at my mana bar. This character basically gets infinite healing the entire time you play, which is extremely good. So this is one of the reasons why Favoured Souls are a little bit easier to level than Clerics as spellcasters, because Clerics eventually will run out of spell points when it comes to healing. As a Favoured Soul, I've cast like, 20 heal spells at this point, and my bar has basically not moved. So again, if you want to give something a try, Favoured Soul is definitely a nice starter, especially when it comes to healing. Even endgame raid Favoured Souls will still use Close Wounds because of how incredibly powerful it is as a just spammable tool because it costs so little. And as a DPS Favoured Soul, as a burner of your foes, it is very good for this as well. All right, so now let's go over some of the combat tips and tricks with Favoured Soul. So as I mentioned with this character, I've got this heal spell. Make sure this is easily keybound somewhere. You're going to take this pretty early, so that way I'm pretty much borderline invincible when I'm fighting enemies. Also, because I have this quarterstaff, I can fight enemies in the game when my spells are bad. So let's say I want to cast like Nimbus of Light to kill monsters. It's going to take a while to kill something by just casting my basic Nimbus of Light spell. So instead, if I want, I can just go ahead and grab my melee attack and start beating the kobolds down, save some spell points, and kind of take care of them. Fighting with this character is really easy in the early game. And then once your spells take off, as I said, you replace the quarterstaff and do something else. And if the kobolds hit me, it's okay, because they can just stand here and keep beating me up. And there's no way they can ever kill me because my healing is way too high, and again, it's borderline free. Another thing that's nice about Favoured Soul is if you end up joining a party and you play with other people, Favoured Souls make excellent low-level healers because of the low cost, so you can just stand by and keep people alive, and everything is good. However, as I mentioned, you get spell-like abilities. Let me crack these out here. I have the Sunbolt as well. Oh yeah, I didn't show the beacon spell, but the beacon, like I said, it's like a frontal cone, so it heals people in front of you. It also heals you as well. So if you're, again, if you want to play as that kind of healer role, you can kind of have this kind of beacon that you're shooting at people. Now, as I mentioned, you have these spell-like abilities. So I have Sunbolt as well as Nimbus of Light. Sunbolt, as I said, is pretty cool. I target an enemy and then I cast Sunbolt, and then boom, this like beam of light comes out and it hits a guy for a few hundred damage, and it's not too bad. It has a 6-second cooldown, so I can kind of use it very frequently, but it's a line, so it will actually hit all enemies in a row. But just remember, you actually have to kind of line it up. So with this spell, what you want to do is you want to target whatever is in back and then kind of fire it down as you're hitting enemies. Additionally, my regular Nimbus of Light hits an enemy for 36 damage, but the spell-like ability, oh, he died. That sucks to be that guy. The spell-like ability for Nimbus of Light is hitting for 80, so it's actually able to one-shot all of these kobolds, which is nice. Actually, I can't even one-shot the shaman. Nimbus of Light is not a very good spell, so you will use it during the leveling process, but eventually this will get replaced as you level up higher. But for now, it's fine. In between, you can still use some of your regular spells, so don't be afraid to use spells, Soundburst, Deific Vengeance, or even spells like Searing Light. Soundburst is great because it's an area of effect spell, so if I climb over here and I find some bad guys, one of the ways you're going to want to use your AoE spells, don't target them. So usually if I am like using Sunbolt or Nimbus of Light, I click a target and then I cast my spell and it hits them. However, with AoE spells like Soundburst, it's better to ground target. To do that, you want to use your cursor to like target an area, so like this, where I'm just looking somewhere, and then I cast it here, so that way I guarantee it kind of hits everywhere where I want it to hit. It's hitting the whole area and all of the monsters. So that way I'm able to do my area of effect damage here and kind of take everything down. Sometimes you can still target, but again, when you have the option of ground targeting is good. Another reason why Soundburst is nice is it's a stun as well, so you can kind of stun guys and kind of melee them down. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to Favoured Soul. Additionally, you also get the spell Searing Light, which is very quickly going to replace Nimbus of Light the second that you get it. Searing Light costs twice as much as Nimbus of Light. However, it does way more than double the damage. Again, I have no items equipped and it's doing 93 damage per hit. So for double the spell point cost, instead of doing 33, I'm now doing 100. So again, once you get Searing of Light, you basically never cast your Nimbus of Light spell ever again. You just cast Searing Light, and one Searing Light's enough to kill everything in the quest. And at 8 cost, that means I can cast like 80 of these, and there's not 80 monsters in the quest. So again, not too bad when it comes to your spells. As far as spell point management goes, Favoured Soul is pretty lax. Another thing that's nice about Favoured Souls is that if you have an item that gives you spell points, Favoured Souls actually get twice as many spell points from it. That's just a mechanic that they have. So again, keep that in mind. Spell point items are really good for this character. You'll have a lot of spell points and you won't really know what to do with them all the time. And then another thing, if you are out of spell points, always remember that you can head over and find a shrine, and shrines will give you all of your spell points back. So I can just go over here and then heal up. Don't use the shrine for healing your hit points. You're a healer and you've got closed wounds, which again, I cannot stress enough how ridiculous this is. You can just keep going. You're gonna notice me jumping and casting. The reason I jump and cast is because if you cast spells while on the ground, your character actually slows. You'll notice there's like a little bit of a lag where like, oh, I'm actually not getting slowed here, which is kind of funny. But like if I try to cast a spell, so if I cast Searing Light, I'm slow, like lowers my movement speed, but if I'm in the air, I can still move forward without actually losing some of my movement speed. So that's one of the reasons you're going to see me and others do like a jump cast, where if I'm jumping, I actually don't lose any speed, so I can keep moving at full speed, which is kind of nice. So again, always keep that in mind. That's an option. Jump casting is very popular. A lot of spellcasters will do it, and that's one of the reasons why we actually put points into the jump skill to make sure that you can jump cast relatively effectively as you go through the game. Now, usually this will be the part where I tell you about all the cool consumables you can get as a Favoured Soul that can help you on your adventures, that will make you a much more successful character, that can help you stay alive and protect yourself. The problem is you're a divine caster, you have protection spells out the wazoo. You got resistance spells, you have magic missile protection, you have magic circle against evil, which gives you a whole bunch of like damage reduction, you have healing. So you don't really need most of that. However, there are a couple things I'm still going to show you that you can buy some cool consumables to help you on your journey. So first, we're going to head into the marketplace to look for some of the initial consumables. Even though your character has basically free healing, in the early levels before you get closed wounds, you'll want to have something to help you out. So you can in fact buy potions. However, you're more likely going to buy wands. Wands are nice because it allows you to heal other people without having to pay the cost. So if I buy a wand of cure moderate wounds here, you can just use it once you're level 3 at any time. There's no like chance or anything like other characters have to use. You can just grab this and use it on people to heal them, so you can heal your allies. Additionally, you can buy wands or potions of either Eagle's Splendor if you're Charisma based, or Owl's Wisdom if you are Wisdom based in the early levels, to increase the amount of main stat that you have. This doesn't stack with items, so if you have like a +4 wisdom item, this isn't going to stack with it, but I don't have a +4 wisdom item, so being able to increase my wisdom here can actually be quite nice. Now, you will also need spell components for all of your spells, and one of the best places to buy them is Featherfall's Apothecary in House Jarasco. So in the northeast corner of the market, you're going to find the door to Jarasco, and then as I kind of go down this windy path, you will find your way into House Jarasco here. Whoops, I should have taken the road. And we have Featherfall's Apothecary. Inside the apothecary here, you will find the divine reagent vendor, and I say, hey, I'd like to trade. I want cleric and favorite soul spell components, and this is where you get all your spell components that you could ever want for your character for every single level. So level 1 spells, level 2, level 3, etc. And then on top of that, there's also a higher level potion vendor, which you can buy potions to increase your power. Most specifically, you can buy the greater like brilliance potions, which gives you light spell power for your light spells, or if you get fire spells, greater inferno potions. So you can do that to help keep yourself, just give you some extra power if you have money to burn. On top of that, you can also buy stuff like curse removal potions and disease removal potions. These are really nice, as well as the restoration potion. I think, yeah, there's the lesser, oh, they don't sell lesser restoration potions here, they do in the market, but neutralize poison, remove curse, and remove disease are good. You can actually get those spells as a favorite soul. The problem is, unlike a cleric who gets tons of spells, you get a much smaller list, so it's rare that you actually take these spells, especially given that you can just buy these. Or you can buy wands. Wands are also a good option, so that way you can remove diseases and curses from your allies. However, the last thing we're going to check here is actually up this hill, because there's one more vendor which I think you'll appreciate, especially once you get into the higher levels, and that is right through here in the House of Wizardry. House of Wizardry has a divine scroll vendor front and center, and this character will sell you the high level divine scrolls, most specifically heal, the strongest heal spell in the game. You get this spell, you're going to learn it, and you can cast it, but sometimes you'll be low on spell points, so just having one of these is nice. Heal heals a ton of health, as well as almost every negative status effect in the game, which is good. Greater restoration scrolls. We actually take these scrolls because the spell is okay, but why spend the points when this doesn't scale with your level? So why are we going to spend our spell points on it when we can just use a scroll and then not have to worry about it? So scroll of greater restoration is good. And then again, same thing, you can save spell points by getting scrolls of raise dead and scrolls of resurrection. One of the reasons to actually have spells is because you can quicken them, and if they're quickened, that means they just go off faster. So mid combat, let's say you're in a raid scenario and like, you know, tank goes down, you're like, oh no, somebody's got to do something. You can quickly like blast out the quickened spell if you have it. But in non-combat scenarios, let's say you have a hireling and your hireling dies, you can just whip out the scroll, bring them back, and you didn't spend any spell points yourself. Now let's talk about the equipment that you should be wearing when you're playing as a favored soul spellcaster. In this case, you want anything that increases your constitution and your wisdom. These are obviously important stats. Anything that increases your health is good. Anything that gives you spell points is also good. As far as your spell powers go, which you can check with this little nubbin right here, you want things that give you radiant spell power or light spell power, as well as fire spell power for some of your fire abilities. You're gonna have a couple of those. Force spell power for some of your force abilities, you'll have a couple of those. That's like Comet Fall and Flame Strike, spells that just deal like generic damage, which is good. And then of course, obviously positive or healing spell power. That's what you need. You don't need cold or acid or anything like that, just the main kind of the big ones there. If you're ever unsure, the smiting ability in Angel of Vengeance, Fire, Force, Light, Physical, actually physical is also force, same thing. That's what you're going to be looking for on your spell powers on your gear. Additionally, you can get armor class increases, but that doesn't really matter too much because you're not going to be like, if you take damage, you just heal it. So it's not a big deal. What you'd rather is more physical and magical resistance rating bonuses, which are called sheltering, which reduce the damage you take. So that can be quite good for this. So you can, that way you can just take less damage and then heal it back up. Will saves, reflex saves, fortitude saves are also good. Anything gives you bonuses to saves is pretty nice. And then lastly, you want things that give bonuses to your spell schools. So anything gives a bonus to like evocation spells is really relevant because you're going to need that for your character. And that's pretty much the main gear that you're going to need. So like I said, start with the quarterstaff, then at higher levels, you're going to swap to shield and probably like whatever, literally any weapon you can get that gives you the spell powers that are relevant for you. So that might be like a scepter that you pick up, or maybe you pick up a bastard sword that has radiance and radiance crit, and you're like, oh cool, just put it on. You don't need to attack people. It doesn't matter that you're not proficient with the weapon. All that matters is you get these spell stats off of it for amping up your character. If you're ever unsure about what type of stats you should be using on a character like this, just bear in mind I do have in the beginner basics document, there is a gearing section that kind of goes through general stats that you should be looking out for, and I kind of rank them based on tiers about how important they are for your general success. Alrighty, and now we're going to go through the actual written build guide here. So in case you don't know how to follow it, this is pretty simple. We are human, but as I said, it doesn't really matter. Just pick whatever race you think is cool. The main stats here, we're going with wisdom. You could play charisma as a human. There's no real reason to, so we're going to go stack up wisdom. But let's say you're playing like a dragonborn, and dragonborns both get a bonus to charisma, but they also get a dragon breath that only scales off of charisma. Then, you know, that's kind of cool. So maybe go charisma there, but wisdom is going to be where we go for now. Skills, we already talked about it: heal, spellcraft, jump, and concentration. You start with concentration, then you finish out with jump because you don't need that much concentration. For feats, as I said, we take the metamagic feats, then we take spell focus, and then we grab the shield mastery, and then spellcaster feats the whole way up. One of the main things is you're going to get a spell called Bursts of Glacial Wrath at level 24. You don't need cold spell power for this. What it does is it just allows you to freeze enemies solid based off of your evocation. Evocation is a damaging school. It's not usually a crowd control school. So getting a very powerful crowd control effect in your damage is super, super nice. We take Knowledge of Battle, so you can use Wisdom to hit and damage with your quarterstaves in the early game, and then Stout of Heart to gain more health as you level up. The energy absorptions you get at 5, 10, and 15 are Fire, Electric, and Cold. They're the most common damage types you take. And then that's pretty much it. As far as your spells go, again, all the damage spells are up front: Nimbus of Light, Deific Vengeance, Searing Light, Holy Smite, Flame Strike, Comet Fall, Firestorm, Divine Wrath, Celestial Bombardment. So again, you're going to be casting these spells sooner and when you get them. And then the rest of the spells are pretty much all defense spells. You're going to notice that I basically don't take any healing spells the entire time we go up here. And the main reason that you don't take any healing spells is because you don't need them. The only spell you need is Close Wounds. You take Cure Light at level 2 just to make sure you have a cure spell for the super early game. But by the time you hit, I think it's level 3 in my build guide, you're going to have Close Wounds maxed out, and you'll have infinite healing, so you don't need any of the other cure spells. Don't even worry about it. As far as the enhancements go, we are maining Angel of Vengeance, taking all the good stuff, with a little bit of Beacon of Hope and a little bit of War Soul, just because War Soul gives you some tankiness, and Beacon of Hope gives you that extra healing, which is nice. And then the actual order here, we start with Angel of Vengeance to grab the Nimbus of Light spell-like ability, so you can cast it right away. Then we go Beacon of Hope to pick up the Close Wounds, then finish out Angel of Vengeance, and then finish out the other trees. As far as Epic Destinies go, for when you get to that part, we will also be using Exalted Angel. Exalted Angel is basically the continuation of Angel of Vengeance, more Holy Fire and more Holy Spell damage, which is kind of cool. However, there's a couple extra things we're going to be picking up here. Number one is Fatesinger, because Fatesinger has an ability that reduces the cost of all of your spells, which is really, really nice. So you're going to get spell cost reduction from Fatesinger. And on top of that, Draconic Incarnation also has spell cost reduction. So Draconic Incarnation is going to reduce the cost of your spells by 10%, Fatesinger by another 10%. Epic levels reduce the cost of your spells by 10%. You can get a 10% spell cost reduction item, and all of that adds up together for 40% less cost of your spells, so you can just kind of blast things out. On top of that, you also get Efficient Maximize out of Exalted Angel, so your Maximize spell metamagic ability costs less. And out of Angel of Vengeance, we also get Efficient Maximize as well out of here. So as a result, your character ends up having a lot of Efficient Maximize. So Maximize spell will, I think, only cost 7 spell points extra on your spells. And since they cost less, what you're going to have happen is spells that cost 50 to cast at the end game normally. Instead, will actually cost less than 50 with all of your meta magic feats applied because of all of the cost reductions you're going to have. And that's basically it. That's Favored Soul. I like Favored Soul a lot. I actually much prefer Favored Soul to Cleric, just because I like that you get more spell points, so you can kind of be this type of arcane or divine canon. Bear in mind, Favored Souls, at least of the recording of this video, are not as potent spellcasters as you might see from some of the other main contenders like Sorcerer, Alchemist, and Druid. They're not a current member of what we've been calling for a long time the big three. However, they are still good in their own right, and their healing allows them to slot into pretty much any group. So even if you join a group and you're like, man, I don't have the stats for this, maybe your DCs are lower, it's okay. You can just join a group and just start spamming that close wounds button, and no one is going to complain. Everybody loves when there's a pocket healer standing right behind them. But then even further beyond that, this character is a very easy breeze to level. I've recently played a Favored Soul through the entire game as a caster, and I had an absolute blast just ripping through monsters. So hopefully you will enjoy yourself as well. However, I might have missed something. So if you're an expert Favored Soul player, please leave a comment down below. And if you are looking for not only this build, as well as some maybe alternatives, maybe you want to play a melee Favored Soul, check the description of this video for the link to the beginner basics build guides. As not only is there Favored Soul, there are alternative builds as well. So hopefully that will help you find what you're looking for. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching. If you need more, there is a link to the playlist with all the other beginner basics in the description of this video. And on top of that, I'm going to release other videos you might find interesting as well. That's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Cast Favored Soul spells. Pew, 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 pew. Favored Soul. Pew, pew.